Location, Los Angeles, Sunset Boulevard. Warm evening light, palm trees silhouetted like sleepy giants. Studio lights flicker to life in the distance as a red on-air sign blinks above Studio 3 at LA Talk Central. It all started like any other Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday where you debate whether to microwave leftover pad thai or just surrender to cereal for dinner. Keanu Reeves, yes, that Keanu, was set to appear live on The Soul Seat, a popular podcast/talk show hosted by Luma Garcia, a former war correspondent turned emotional truth hacker. The show, known for peeling back celebrity veneers like old wallpaper, had never hosted someone as enigmatic as Keanu. He was dressed simply, black jeans, black boots, a loose charcoal button-up that looked like it had never once met an iron. His beard was a perfect storm of scruff and stoicism. As he walked into the studio, heads turned, not because of his fame, but because he carried himself like a question no one had quite figured out how to ask. He sat down, nodded politely to Luma and offered a small smile, and then the cameras rolled. Transcript, episode 184, Ghosts and Grace. Opening music, ambient tones, soft piano over city noise. Luma Garcia, smiling. Welcome back to The Soul Seat. I'm Luma Garcia. And tonight, we have someone who doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll try anyway. He's the man behind Neo, behind John Wick, but also behind 1,000 quiet acts of kindness most people never hear about. Keanu Reeves, welcome. Keanu Reeves, quiet chuckle. Thanks for having me, Luma. I like what you've done with the place. Kinda smells like honesty and espresso. Luma. High praise coming from the man who literally walked 20 miles once to help a stranger with a flat tire. Keanu. Shrugs. Felt like the thing to do. Luma. Let's dive right in. We talk a lot about soul truths here. Is there one you've never spoken aloud? Something you've carried? A pause. Keanu's fingers tap his thigh. He looks down, then up. A different look in his eyes, like a door creaking open. Keanu. There is something I've never told anyone publicly. It has to do with the Pope. Luma freezes slightly. Pope Francis? Keanu. Yeah. The confession. Heard around the world. The air in the studio thickened. Not a single intern typed. A cameraman held his breath so long his smartwatch thought he was unconscious. Keanu leaned forward, eyes steady. 26 years ago, I was in Rome. Not for a premiere, just wandering. I'd lost someone, and I ended up at a convent outside Vatican City. I thought I was losing my mind. That's when I met him. Not Pope Francis yet, just Father Jorge. He saved my life. The words fell like thunder. Not metaphorically. I was on the edge, literally. Rooftop, I was ready. He didn't preach, he just sat beside me. Lit a cigarette. Told me that maybe life wasn't about surviving every moment. Maybe it was about making even one moment easier for someone else. Then he gave me this. Keanu reached into his shirt, pulled out a worn silver chain hidden beneath the black fabric. Dangling from it, a tiny copper key. He said this key would open a door one day. That I'd know when. Luma was stunned. And have you found that door? Keanu nodded once. Last month. In a shelter in São Paulo. But it's not about the door, it's about what's behind it. Off-camera chaos. What the cameras didn't catch, what happened during the commercial break, was even more surreal. A Vatican liaison watching, the broadcast from a security room beneath St. Peter's Basilica, dropped his espresso and muttered something that roughly translated to, "Oh no, it's starting." The broadcast triggered a fail-safe protocol. The key Keanu showed? It wasn't just symbolic. It was real, it was dangerous, and it was never meant to be seen. Flashback. The Silent Pact Room, 1999. A much younger Keanu wandered the narrow cobbled alleys of Trastevere like a ghost. The loss of his child and his partner had hollowed him out. Rumors say he hadn't spoken to anyone in days. He found himself at the Church of San Pietro in Montorio. There, sweeping the steps in worn sandals and an Argentinian scowl, was Father Jorge Mario Bergoglio. What happened next had never been recorded, until now. Father Jorge saw the actor for what he was, a man ready to vanish. He invited him into the rectory. They shared bread, wine, and then silence. "Tell no one of this place," Jorge had said. "Unless the world is bleeding." He handed him the key. "You will know, and they will listen because of who you are." At the time, Keanu thought the priest was just being poetic, maybe a little dramatic. Maybe it was the wine. He didn't expect the key to unlock an archive beneath Vatican ground, an archive that contained centuries of unspoken acts of kindness, miracles, cover-ups, revolutions, and one act of forgiveness so powerful, it could either redeem the church or burn it to the ground. Viral madness. By the time the episode ended, Twitter was on fire. Hashtags, Keanu Key, and the Pope Secrets hit trending within 11 minutes. Reddit, theorists abandoned their Area 51 threads and jumped into Vatican conspiracy mode. Memes exploded. One showed Keanu in full John Wick gear, holding the tiny copper key like a sword. Caption: "Forgive me, Father. I'm unlocking the truth." Meanwhile, in the Vatican, Pope Francis sat alone in his private study, the TV off, his glasses lowered on his nose. A trembling hand held a small square letter, written in calligraphy, was a single sentence. "The key has surfaced," he remembers. He folded it and smiled, a tired, heavy smile that suggested both dread and hope. Then he whispered, "Dios nos ayude. It's time." The ripple effect within 24 hours. Keanu's old interviews were scoured for hidden meanings. The Vatican issued a vague statement about respecting all personal spiritual journeys. The shelter in Sao Paulo was surrounded by reporters, all asking about the door. And a single email arrived at Luma Garcia's inbox, from unknown source of protonmail.com. Subject: "If Keanu speaks the truth, you must read what we found in Argentina." Attachment: the scroll of the 14 lights. Luma's revelation after the broadcast. Luma sat alone in her editing suite. She rewatched. The moment Keanu showed the key, frame by frame, something in his expression, some glint in his eye, told her this was bigger than ratings, bigger than celebrity. She whispered to herself, "We're not telling stories anymore. We're uncovering them." She picked up her phone. "Get me a flight to Rome tonight. The Eternal City doesn't sleep. It broods." Luma Garcia stepped onto the cobblestone path outside Fiumicino Airport like she was stepping into another century. Her boots echoed with purpose. The words from Keanu's interview still rang in her ears. "It's not about the door. It's about what's behind it." She didn't know exactly what that meant yet, but her instincts, which had once helped her dodge mortar shells in Kandahar, told her this wasn't just a philosophical metaphor. She had a folder clutched under her arm. Emails from an anonymous source who called themselves Archivist 14. Inside was a copy of something called The Scroll of the 14 Lights. The pages looked ancient, handwritten, frighteningly real. As she flagged down a taxi, her mind buzzed with questions. But one burned brightest. Why did Keanu have a key to a Vatican archive that doesn't officially exist? Meanwhile, beneath Vatican City, the vault door hissed open, not with creaks and rust, but the smooth sound of technology humming beneath. Centuries of marble and incense. Inside stood Cardinal Domenico Gattuso, keeper of La Biblioteca Oscura, the secret Vatican archive known only to 6 people in the world. His hands trembled as he placed a velvet pouch on the table. From it he removed a matching copper key. 2 keys, 2 witnesses, he muttered, and 1 reckoning. On the table before him, a file marked Project Pax Aeterna stamped Classified. Ecclesia ad Lucim. He opened it. Inside, photos. One of a young Jorge Mario Bergoglio, later Pope Francis. The other, Keanu Reeves, dated 1999. Standing beside him. Flashback. Buenos Aires, 1973. Here's the twist no one expected. This wasn't the first time their paths had crossed. In a dusty church-turned-refugee shelter in Buenos Aires, a young seminarian named Jorge comforted families fleeing political violence. One of them, a wide-eyed boy of about 9, spoke only English and was clutching a Polaroid of a woman with a warm smile and a scar above her left eyebrow. That boy, Keanu Reeves. His mother had vanished while volunteering with a peace mission. No embassy paperwork, no death certificate, just gone. Father Jorge took the boy in for 3 nights, called him Chico del Sol, boy of the sun. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, young Keanu disappeared. Some say a CIA operative extracted him. Others say a Jesuit monk helped him board a cargo plane bound for Canada. Neither story was ever confirmed. Until now. The Eternal City doesn't sleep. It broods. Luma Garcia stepped onto the cobblestone path outside Fiumicino Airport, like she was stepping into another century. Her boots echoed with purpose. The words from Keanu's interview still rang in her ears. It's not about the door. It's about what's behind it. She didn't know exactly what that meant yet, but her instincts, which had once helped her dodge mortar shells in Kandahar, told her this wasn't just a philosophical metaphor. She had a folder clutched under her arm, emails from an anonymous source who called themselves Archivist 14. Inside was a copy of something called the Scroll of the 14 Lights. The pages looked ancient, handwritten, frighteningly real. As she flagged down a taxi, her mind buzzed with questions, but one burned brightest. Why did Keanu have a key to a Vatican archive that doesn't officially exist? Meanwhile, beneath Vatican City, the vault door hissed open, not with creaks and rust, but the smooth sound of technology humming beneath. Centuries of marble and incense. Inside stood Cardinal Domenico Gattuso, keeper of La Biblioteca Oscura, the secret Vatican archive known only to 6 people in the world. His hands trembled as he placed a velvet pouch on the table. From it he removed a matching copper key. 2 keys. 2 witnesses, he muttered, and 1 reckoning. On the table before him, a file marked Project Pax Aeterna, stamped. Classified, Ecclesia et Lucem. He opened it. Inside, photos. One of a young Jorge Mario Bergoglio, later Pope Francis. The other, Keanu Reeves, dated 1999, standing beside him. Flashback, Buenos Aires, 1973. Here's the twist no one expected. This wasn't the first time their paths had crossed. In a dusty church-turned-refugee shelter in Buenos Aires, a young seminarian named Jorge comforted families fleeing political violence. One of them, a wide-eyed boy of about 9, spoke only English and was clutching a Polaroid of a woman with a warm smile and a scar above her left eyebrow. That boy? Keanu Reeves. His mother had vanished while volunteering with a peace mission. No embassy paperwork, no death certificate, just gone. Father Jorge took the boy in for 3 nights, called him Chico del Sol, boy of the sun. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, young Keanu disappeared. Some say a CIA operative extracted him. Others say a Jesuit monk helped him board a cargo plane bound for Canada. Neither story was ever confirmed until now. The door opened, not in a grand Indiana Jones-style spectacle, but in silence. Sacred, unnatural silence. The kind of silence that makes your bones go quiet. Behind the crumbling Vatican walls, the hidden chamber pulsed with a soft white glow that didn't illuminate, but revealed. No visible light source. No switches. Just presence. Keanu stepped in first. Luma followed. The chamber curved gently, walls lined with what looked like glass panels, but when they looked closer, the panels didn't reflect. They shimmered, with motion. Like water held vertically. Inside each panel, moments. Historical, intimate, and impossible. A mother clutching her child during the Armenian genocide, praying as soldiers passed. A young African girl planting a seed in cracked earth, smiling as a single drop of rain fell. A nurse during the 1918 flu pandemic writing letters to families of the dying. A prisoner in a gulag teaching the guard's child how to read using only dirt and stick. Luma gasped. "These are memories," Keanu whispered, "of mercy." The archive of Actsit wasn't a vault of doctrine. This was something older, deeper, a living testament of kindness. Moments of profound human grace preserved by time, protected by the Church's most secret order. The Custodes Lucis, the keepers of the light. And according to the scroll of the 14 lights, the chamber only opened when the world neared what it called the fifth silence. A time when compassion becomes currency, truth is negotiable, and silence no longer signals peace, but fear. Sound familiar? The custodian appears a figure emerged from the end of the hall. Cloaked, barefoot, hooded. He held no weapon. No staff. Just a lantern, unlit, yet glowing. He spoke in Latin first, then shifted to English. His voice was soft but resonated like a drumbeat inside your ribs. He returns, the boy of the sun, and the witness. The vault opens. Keanu bowed slightly. "You know me?" The custodian nodded. "We have waited, since you were touched by the flame." Luma whispered, "What is this place?" He replied, "This is the echo, the collective breath of every kindness unnoticed, every sacrifice unrewarded. This is what saves the world while the world isn't watching." The truth about Keanu's family, they walked deeper into the chamber where the memories began to blur. Not into images, but into feelings. Luma stumbled, breath catching. "I can feel them, each one, like it's singing to my spine." Keanu's steps slowed. He paused in front of a smaller panel. His hand instinctively reached out as if something pulled him. The scene shimmered to life. A young woman, late 20s, in a red shawl, standing in front of a war hospital in Laos. She turned and looked directly at him. His mother, but younger, and alive. Luma watched in stunned silence as Keanu dropped to his knees. The woman in the vision knelt too, as if mirroring him across time. She whispered words they couldn't hear, but they didn't need to. The custodian said softly, "She was one of us. She passed the fire to you when you were born. You carried it unknowingly, until the day you met Jorge." Luma asked, "Why was he chosen?" "Because pain tempered him but never hardened him. Because he never confused righteousness with power. Because he sat beside a stranger once, not to save him, but to understand him." The pilgrimage begins. The custodian presented them with a small scroll. The path of 4 lights, a pilgrimage. The vault must close once more, but the world is ready now, if its soul is reminded of who it once was. You must go to the 4 points of mercy. Each point was an ancient location tied not to miracles but to forgiveness that defied history. Point 1. The Church of the Unseen Martyrs, Ethiopia. Point 2. The Bridge of Ashes, Kyoto, Japan. Point 3. The Weeping Stone, Cusco, Peru. Point 4. The Island of the Last Psalm, off the coast of Iceland. In each, something had been left behind. A message. A seed. They must gather them, not as artifacts, but as a truth that must be carried by someone who has suffered and survived. Luma. Why now? The custodian. Because mercy no longer trends. Because the fire of division spreads faster than the breath of understanding. And because people listen to voices they recognize. He looked at Keanu. And yours. Carrie's. Keanu's decision. Outside the chamber, the world buzzed with media hysteria, theories, fake miracle photos, a meme of Keanu holding the key photoshopped onto Gandalf's staff, fan accounts arguing whether this was a promo for John Wick 7, Vatican drift. But inside, stillness, purpose. Keanu turned to Luma. I've been a passenger most of my life. To grief, to fate, to people's expectations, but this, he clenched the scroll. This feels like driving. Luma grinned. Let's see where the road goes. Back in the U.S., chaos brews. While the duo prepares for their journey, something stirs in the shadows. An organization, long buried beneath the Vatican's darker archives, has taken notice. Ordo. Obscura, the Order of the Hidden. They believe the vault should never have opened, that these truths will destabilize the world, and they have one mission. Silence the fire. Silence the boy. Before the light spreads. Meanwhile, at a press conference, Pope Francis stepped onto the balcony, a rare public appearance. The crowd hushed. He raised a hand, spoke plainly. Sometimes truth does not come from power, but from pain. And sometimes it takes a man who lost everything to remind us of what we still have. The speech didn't go viral. It went global. Millions tuned in. A movement began. When Keanu and Luma stepped into the chamber, they expected old scrolls, Vatican tech, maybe even some Dan Brown-style laser tripwires. They did not expect the corridor of whispering lights. The panels along the curved walls weren't made of glass. They were translucent, alive, almost. And inside them, memories. Not digital projections, not holograms, living memories. Each panel showed a moment in time, not from popes, kings, or emperors, but from the forgotten, the kind, the compassionate, the overlooked. A mother giving her last loaf of bread, a refugee carrying a wounded stranger, a child giving away his only toy to comfort another in grief, and beneath every memory, a symbol, a small, radiant key. Luma whispered, almost afraid, to break the sanctity of it. This is a record of goodness. Keanu said nothing. He was staring at a panel showing a young version of himself, 10 years old in Argentina, handing a piece of bread to an old man beneath a viaduct. The man had no shoes. The boy had one piece of bread. The moment glowed. I don't remember. That, Keanu murmured. From somewhere in the walls, a voice replied, soft, eternal. But the light remembers you. Vatican surveillance bunker, top secret, top weird. Somewhere beneath Vatican City, two men in tailored suits with crucifix pins stared at a cracked monitor. One of them sipped a triple espresso. The other chain-smoked like the end times were. Trending agent D'Onofrio, head of the Vatican's off-books division known only as La Luce Seconda, turned to his companion. He's inside, the light is responding. Father Adjutant Marco, former Jesuit, current interdimensional archivist, no, really, looked grim. If the light accepts him, the prophecy begins. We can't stop it. D'Onofrio raised an eyebrow. Can we at least delay it? Marco exhaled smoke like a cinematic exorcist. No, but we can try to survive it. Inside the light vault, back to Keanu and Luma, they moved deeper into the corridor. The glow followed their footsteps. More panels lit up as they passed, showing acts of forgotten kindness and unfamous sacrifice. But then the corridor stopped. In front of them, a pedestal. On it, two objects. A black candle, unlit. A sealed book, bound in white cloth. Keanu reached out to the book suddenly. Boom, the candle lit, and the shadows came. The whispering figures, they emerged not from the light, but from behind it. As if the shadows had been hiding in the folds of illumination all along. Cloaked figures, faces hidden, voices layered like ancient choirs run through a broken synthesizer. One of them stepped forward. No feet touched the floor. Their voice echoed in Luma's bones. The light remembers the good, but the shadows remember the rest. Another one glided forward, pointing to Keanu. You carry the light, but do you carry the weight? Keanu looked from the figures to Luma. What does that mean? Luma, now visibly shaken, translated from the Latin carved into the pedestal. To bear the key is to bear the memory of all things. Not just the kind, not just the light, The book on the pedestal began to tremble, and the whispers grew louder. The Book of Echoes. Keanu lifted the Kyojin Daimo book. The cloth unraveled as if it were a living thing. Inside, no printed words, just names, thousands, no, millions, names of people, acts, mistakes, kindnesses, regrets, choices. Each name glowed for a second, then faded. Luma gasped. This is every soul? A page near the back suddenly lit up. Renee Victoria Reeves, 1964. Disappeared 1973. She walked into the light so he would never have to. Keanu's knees buckled. That's my mother. The whisper figures bowed in unison. She was the first lightkeeper. She chose the silence, so you could choose the truth. Flashback within the vault. A memory, replayed, the light around. Them shimmered. The room itself dissolved. They were now standing in Buenos Aires, 1973. Outside a church with graffiti on its stone walls. A woman, Keanu's mother, held the hand of a child. A young Jorge Bergoglio approached. She whispered something in his ear, then turned, looked directly at future Keanu and mouthed, "Find the light." She kissed young Keanu's forehead and stepped into the church. A moment later, soldiers arrived. The scene froze in place like a painting mid-prayer. Luma whispered. She gave herself up, so he could escape, so this moment could happen. The scene faded, back to the corridor, back to the whispers. Keanu dropped the book. Why are you showing me this now? A whisper figure raised its hand. Because the world is forgetting, and you are remembering. The awakening, suddenly, a bell tolled in the distance. Not a sound, but a vibration. The book closed on its own. The candle extinguished. The chamber shook. A new door opened, but this time not to light, to the outside world. And it wasn't the Rome they knew. Outside the chamber was a world altered. The shift the moment the door to the Luz Infinita opened, something had changed globally. Children across the world reported the same dream. A corridor of lights and a man holding a key. A polar satellite transmitted an image of a symbol shaped exactly like Keanu's key, in a glacier that hadn't melted in 20,000 years. In a remote village in Tibet, a blind monk stood up suddenly and said, "He has remembered." And in Rome, Pope Francis opened his eyes from deep meditation. It begins. The world is remembering. To be continued. YouTube transcript. Resol Seed Ep 186, The Light Beneath the Stone. Luma, VO. We thought truth was something you discovered. Turns out it's something you awaken. Keanu. My mother didn't die for politics or a cause. She died to protect the light I didn't understand, until now. Whisper voice, over static. He remembers. Cut to black text on screen. Next, Part 5, The Kindness Conspiracy. The light had gone, the door had closed. Keanu and Luma sat in stunned silence, surrounded by walls that had seen centuries, and secrets, come and go like waves. Between them lay the Book of Echoes, now inert, but not silent. Every now and then, a faint hum pulsed from the binding like it was dreaming. Luma was the first to speak. Did you see the last name in the book before it closed? Keanu shook his head. Luma opened her satchel and pulled out a hastily taken Polaroid. She'd snapped it just as the final page began to turn. She showed it to Keanu. Harmony Network, C-File 451, HEART. Keanu blinked. That's not a person. Luma nodded. No, that's a movement. Flashback, 10 years earlier, Lisbon, Portugal. A kind-faced woman in a yellow scarf handed a small envelope to a homeless man. Inside, $50 and a note that read, "You are still seen." Unbeknownst to her, that act had been logged, not by a phone, not by a camera, but by something ancient and invisible, a system the Vatican once called the Archangel algorithm. It wasn't artificial intelligence, it was empathetic intelligence. Developed by a breakaway faction of monks and engineers known as the Harmony Network, the algorithm didn't track clicks or money. It tracked kindness, the currency of grace. The conspiracy? It had been hiding in plain sight. What is the HEART file? Back in the present, Luma and Keanu stood before a sealed Vatican safe labeled 451, HEART. The acronym was etched in ancient script. Human Empathy Activation and Restoration Transmission, Keanu. Sounds like a Cold War satellite. Luma. Worse. It's a psychological firewall against indifference. She typed in the date Keanu's mother disappeared. The vault opened. Inside, a globe. Not just any globe. One divided into regions not by geography, but by empathy thresholds. Each area glowed at different intensities, and hovering above it, 7 profiles. Anonymous, global, connected by actions, not bloodlines, each marked by a symbol, the same radiant key Keanu wore. The 7 light bearers, the kindness conspiracy, wasn't run by one man, or even a church. It was a legacy passed through human hearts like a torch. The light bearers were a postman in Kolkata who delivered letters decades late, simply to heal. A midwife in Aleppo who hid orphaned children beneath floorboards. A blind chef in Lagos who cooked meals for strangers every Friday unpaid. A retired librarian in Nova Scotia who rewrote suicide notes into poems. A prisoner in Peru who taught inmates to read, with no books, only memory. A teacher in South Korea who tutored gang members in secret. KeanuReeves. Marked not by fame, but by the moment he shared bread at 10 years old with a barefoot man in Argentina. Keanu whispered, awed, it was never about religion. Luma. It was about remembering that we belong to each other. The twist. Someone's been hunting the light. Just as they started to piece together the light bearer's map, a Vatican alarm began to scream, emergency breach. Unknown entry, sub-level theta. On the monitor, 5 figures in white moving like ghosts through stone. Luma backed up. Who the hell are they? Keanu's jaw clenched. I've seen them before, at the shelter in Sao Paulo. They were called the Pale Choir, rogue zealots who believed humanity needed to earn salvation, not receive it freely. They viewed empathy not as strength, but as interference. Their motto? Purge the light. Pain makes purity. They didn't come for relics. They
came for the Book of Echoes.
Chased through the eternal city, what followed was less quiet Vatican study group and more Jason born with incense and Latin hymns. Keanu, Luma, and a loyal archivist named Brother Matteo raced through tunnels that once smuggled Protestants, now echoing with ghostly chants and footsteps. At one point, Keanu turned and said what no one expected. I'll distract them. You take the book. Luma protested. Are you crazy? You're the key, Keanu. Exactly. And I've been running long enough. Then he smiled. That calm, ridiculous, immortal Keanu smile. Besides, I've got some moves they've never seen. The book escapes. Barely while. Keanu led the Pale Choir through a labyrinth of Roman aqueduct ruins. Luma and Matteo reached a hidden exit known only to Vatican janitors and very clever pigeons. They emerged into the open air. Rome, glittering before them, oblivious. Luma clutched the Book of Echoes, and in her bag the files of the Harmony Network, the names of people who had never made history, but had quietly saved it. Meanwhile, a signal is sent back in a secret Harmony Network outpost beneath an abandoned bookstore in Morocco. A woman received an alert on a cracked monitor. File 451 reactivated. Keymaster awakened. Archive breach confirmed. New objective. Initiate wave. One, she stood up, lit a candle, and whispered, "The conspiracy is alive." Then she typed a message in a forgotten language of symbols. Translation. Gather the 7. The time of remembering has begun. Pope Francis sat alone in the dim, candle-lit library. No guards, no cameras, just a soft, Gregorian chant humming through unseen speakers like the voice of an old friend. Before him, a sealed envelope marked simply, "Loose Protocol, Last Rite." He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a small note, handwritten by a younger version of himself, Father Jorge, dated 1999. If he returns and he carries the key, do not protect the church, protect the light. He folded the note and whispered, "Forgive me, old friend." It's time. He rose, and summoned the conclave of silence and the most secret council within the Vatican. Even cardinals whispered about it like children whisper about monsters. Tonight it would judge the truth. Meanwhile, below the basilica, the lightbreaker's cell. Keanu sat in a stone cell. He wasn't cuffed. He wasn't even technically imprisoned, but 3 silent guards outside told him, "Yeah, this is Vatican jail, all right." He stared at the floor, the soft glow of the key still pulsing faintly beneath his shirt. He'd surrendered willingly. Gave Luma the book. Said he needed to face this part alone. He didn't know what would happen next. But he knew one thing. I'm not here to expose the church. I'm here to remind it. St. Peter's Basilica, the hidden tribunal room, 1:04 a.m. Beneath the Vatican's public face lay a circular stone chamber. Candles in the shape of angel wings. A ring of marble seats. 7 figures cloaked in white sat silently. This was the conclave of silence, the judges of truth too dangerous for history books. Luma stood behind thick glass above, clutching the Book of Echoes like a mother might hold a child during an earthquake. The chamber master spoke. "You have brought us the key bearer. The book. The whispers have returned. Now, speak your truth." Keanu stepped forward, voice calm but cutting like moonlight on water. "You've hidden beauty, buried mercy beneath ritual, built walls where there should have been bridges, and you did it not to protect God, but yourselves." Silence. Then a female voice, surprisingly gentle, echoed back. "And yet you return. Why?" Keanu reached into his coat, pulling out a photograph of his mother. Because someone gave their life for a truth she couldn't explain. She just lived it. He raised the key. "I don't want power. I want memory. I want this church to stop being a museum of fear and start being a mirror of grace." Above, Luma's decision. As the conclave debated, Luma received a message on a secure Vatican terminal. An offer. Turn over the Book of Echoes. You will be pardoned. Your career protected. She stared at the blinking cursor, then at the book. She remembered the names inside, the moments that would never trend, never sell, but saved lives. Girl in Syria who gave her shoes to a stranger. A janitor in Detroit who wrote anonymous poetry and left it in lockers. A bus driver in Mexico City who drove off route to save a woman from being followed. These weren't headlines. They were humanity. She clicked reject, then plugged the book into the terminal and hit send to every corner of the globe. Vatican Tribunal, real-time fallout. An assistant burst into the chamber mid-debate, sweating, panicked. It's gone live. The book, the file is everywhere." Keanu smiled. One of the cardinals stood. "This is blasphemy. These are undocumented stories. Private." "Axe." Keanu turned, voice louder now. "Since when did goodness require permission?" Another voice, Pope Francis, entered from behind, steady and clear. "Since we forgot that grace was free." He stepped into the center, robes flowing, age vanishing under the weight of conviction. Let them see. Let the world see what faith looked like before it needed a building. Meanwhile, the world reacts. In Brazil, a choir sang on a rooftop, the hymn matching the frequency of the book's coded resonance. In Japan, schoolchildren found a new page written in real time in their lunchroom walls, a new memory encoded by kindness. In rural Montana, an elderly man woke up from a 10-year coma, whispering, "The light came back." The Book of Echoes had gone viral, but not just online. It began syncing with the subconscious of the compassionate. Those who had done good without recognition began dreaming in radiant keys. Back in the Vatican, the reckoning ends, the oldest. Member of the conclave, blind and silent for decades, stood without warning. He spoke one word: accepted. A unanimous whisper followed: accepted. The truth would not be buried again. Keanu bowed. Then the old man reached into his robe and handed Keanu a second key. "You've opened the book. Now open the world." Outside, the papal balcony, dawn. For the first time in history, the Pope addressed the world at sunrise, not noon. And beside him, Keanu Reeves, Luma Garcia, a symbol of the new truth. The Pope raised his hand. "We do not proclaim a new religion. We remember an old truth. Love one another, without a name for it, without a reward for it, without fear." Keanu looked out, across the crowd, remembering the barefoot man in Argentina, and smiled. YouTube transcript, Soul Seat. Powers 188. The reckoning was mercy, Pope Francis, from balcony. "Let the church be a sanctuary not of control, but of compassion, a cathedral of the forgotten. The book has spoken, so must we." Keanu. Every person who's ever helped without being seen, you were never alone. Luma. Closing narration. It wasn't a revolution. It was a remembering, a reckoning, yes, but of mercy, not fire. Final shot. The Book of Echoes glowing across 1,000,000 screens. One line appears: "You are remembered." There were no parades, no gunshots, no United Nations resolutions. But something was different. The morning after the Book of Echoes went global, something small and utterly profound began to ripple across the planet. Like kindness had grown teeth. In Beirut, enemies from opposite sides of a conflict zone sat in silence and swapped letters, hand-delivered by children. In Chicago, a bus driver stopped mid-route to help an elderly woman carry groceries home. The passengers applauded. In Mumbai, a crowd helped rebuild a stranger's streetcar for free, because his name was in the book. In Seoul, a hacker who once dealt in ransomware released a decryption key with a message: "I have remembered the light. I forgive myself." The internet was flooded with hashtags that weren't angry. Echo of good, Jack I am in the book. Let us be light, but not everyone welcomed it. A threat emerges, the architects of chaos. There are those who thrive on confusion, on fear, on a world too divided to ever unite. Enter the architects, an elite network of global influencers, billionaires, and corporate ghosts. You didn't see them in the spotlight. You saw them in shadows, manipulating markets, media, and sometimes morality. To them, the book was a threat. Not because it revealed secrets, but because it inspired action without profit. Their motto: truth is fine, but control is better. At the head of the architects sat a woman known only as Celestine, brilliant, untraceable, surgically elegant, and she had one goal: end the book, end the memory. Keanu's global mission begins. Keanu didn't return to Hollywood. He didn't go on a press tour. Instead, he began visiting every site the book had mentioned, the places tied to the 7 light-bearers. His goal wasn't to lead a movement, it was to protect its spark. If kindness can echo, it can also be silenced. Each visit left behind something: a mural, a poem, a quietly funded community project. No fanfare, just the soft clang of a bell no one could ignore. And with each act, the architects grew more nervous. Luma's last broadcast. The Soul Seat, episode 189, live. Location: a rooftop in Nairobi time, 5:01 a.m. Audience: The world Luma sat in front of a simple camera. No producers, no sponsors, no studio lights, just her, the rising sun, and an open laptop. She leaned forward. This is my last broadcast, not because I've been silenced, but because I've been heard. The Book of Echoes showed us that goodness didn't die. We just stopped talking about it. We got busy. We got angry. We got sold the idea that caring was weakness. She paused, her voice cracking. But what if our power isn't in outrage? It's in remembering each other. She held up a tiny light, a replica of the radiant key. This is yours now. Be loud with your love. Be disruptive with your hope. And if you're scared, that's okay. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the commitment to still show up. Then she turned off the camera. Forever. The architects strike back. The memory shutdown begins. Celestine's plan wasn't violence, it was forgetting. One by one, digital versions of the book were being wiped by quantum-level malware, servers corrupted, copies erased. The phrase "you are remembered" started triggering 404 errors. And soon, people stopped dreaming the dreams of light. The world grew quiet. Hope flickered. Keanu, watching the data collapse, stood on a cliffside in Iceland, where one of the 7 light-bearers had once saved a village during a landslide. He whispered to the sea, "They're trying to unwrite us." But then, the real book responds. Somewhere in New Zealand, a child who had never seen the book drew a symbol in the sand, the radiant key. In Ukraine, a soldier wrote a letter to the mother of his enemy. He'd never heard of the book, but the story ended up matching a page. In the Bronx, a homeless man recited a line word for word that only existed in the hidden section of the Vatican copy. "We are not light because we shine. We shine because we choose to be seen." And then, the dreams returned. The book had gone viral not digitally but biologically. It had lived in people. The acts, the moments, the kindness were now alive in the DNA of the world. You can delete a file, but you can't delete a memory when it becomes a person. The Architect's Fall, Celestine's final interview. Cornered by the collapse of her network, Celestine agreed to a single interview with Keanu and Luma. It aired live. No cuts. Luma asked softly. "Why fight hope?" Celestine didn't blink. "Because it can't be monetized. You gave people a mirror, not a leash, and the world doesn't know how to act without chains." Keanu leaned in. "Then maybe it's time we teach it." He stood, offered her something unexpected. The key. "You're part of this too, if you want to be." Celestine stared at it. And for the first time, her silence wasn't calculated. It was broken. The world unites, and doesn't even notice. The unity didn't come in flags or treaties or fireworks. It came in quiet rebellions of love. Cities began designing community corners, inspired by the kindness map. Prisons started holding monthly echo days, where inmates recorded memories of compassion. Schools taught emotional history alongside world history. And governments, once suspicious, began budgeting for acts of public kindness. And everywhere the radiant key appeared, in graffiti, in fashion, in tattoos, people knew you are remembered. The final scene. The book returns to the light. Keanu and Luma return to the original vault beneath the Vatican. The book pulsed softly in Keanu's arms, almost purring. He placed it back onto the pedestal and said, "Thank you for trusting us." The light flared one last time. The vault sealed, not closed, just complete. Final transcript, the soul seat. Epilogue. To those who remember. Luma, VO. We thought history was made by battles. Turns out, it was made by the moments no one noticed. Keanu. Be kind, not because it fixes the world, but because it makes you someone who can help carry it. Child's voice, faintly, somewhere far away. Are we in the book now? Luma. We always were.